Welcome everybody. I'd especially like to welcome those viewers at home watching via the live stream. And of course, those members in the gallery, and to our special guests and our guest of honour, David Boothman. I will now ask you all if you could be upstanding, and I'll ask Deputy Mayor Stephanie Proud if you could read the opening prayer.
Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions, to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all of this in your name.
Amen.
Amen.
On behalf of councillors, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay our respects to elders past and present. And I'll ask you all now if you'd like to take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, I now declare the special council meeting of the 20th of February 2023 open at 6 p.m. Item 2, attendance, and I would like to welcome the following dignitaries. To our Freeman, Tony Vallelonga JP and Mary Vallelonga. Tony, how's it feel to be back in your old seat, Tony? Good. Freeman Rod Constantine, PSM, welcome along. To David Michael, MLA, Meredith Hammett, MLA, Christine Tontkin, MLA, thank you for coming along and representing the state government. The Honourable Lisa Matrasic, welcome along, Lisa. Rena Sercarelli, welcome along. And to Keith Rickman, OAM, and to the other special guests who've joined us this evening. Item 3 on the agenda is public question time, but I am assuming there are no questions to be asked, and we've got a council meeting tomorrow night, so they can go for it there. So I'll move on to item 4. And I will now invite the Chief Executive Officer, Stuart Jardine, PSM, to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this special council meeting to formally bestow the title of Honorary Freeman of the City on our well-respected colleague, David Boothman, JP. Tonight, Mayor Mark Irwin will move a motion that finalises a formal process Council began in October 2022, when it resolved to bestow the title of Honorary Freeman of the City upon David. The bestowal of the title of Honorary Freeman can be traced back through the records for more than 6 centuries to medieval times. In Western Australia, we've had this authority since 1960. Despite being a relatively recent power, it is the highest honour a council can bestow upon an individual and a significant honour for the recipient. The City of Stirling Honorary Freeman title can be bestowed on any former elected member who has served the City of Stirling community in an exceptional manner and whose activities have substantially improved the quality of life of the city's residents. As you'll see in your programme, over the history of the City of Stirling, there have only been 9 other times when Council determined that someone had made such a significant contribution to our local community to deserve this honour. 2 of these Freemen join us here tonight, Freeman Tony Vallelonga JP and Freeman Rod Constantine PSM. It was my privilege to serve as Chief Executive Officer under Mayor David Boothman, and it's my great pleasure to see him formally acknowledged as our 10th Honorary Freeman of the City of Stirling. I'll now hand over to Mayor Mark Irwin to move the formal motion for Council's consideration. The motion requires an absolute majority. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Can I remind the Freemen sitting around the council chamber they can't vote on this?
Good point.
I will now move to item 5, which is the official motion. And the motion is that in the presence of the dignitaries gathered in the council chamber of the City of Stirling on the 20th of February 2023, and in accordance with the council resolution of bestowal at its meeting held 25th of October 2022, council commences the formal proceedings to affix the common seal and present the honour of Honorary Freeman of the City of Stirling to Mr David Boothman JP. I so move. I ask for a seconder. I'm pretty sure the Deputy Mayor's got a hand up, so we do have a seconder there. I will ask councillors to all raise their hands to vote, noting an absolute majority is required, and I'll put that to the vote, councillors. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That motion is carried. Well, that was lucky. I will now move on to item 6, and I will read out the citation which is written on the certificate. David will shortly be presented, and then I'll ask David to come forward and present him, and he'll have a chance to respond and address everyone in the gallery. Bestowal of the Honorary Freeman of the City of Stirling, conferred upon David Boothman JP. By resolution of Council, the title of Honorary Freeman of the City of Stirling may be bestowed upon any former elected member who has served the City in an exceptional and meritorious manner. The distinguished deeds will have substantially improved the quality of life of the City's residents. David Boothman JP was elected as Councillor for the Balga Ward from 1994 to 2021. He served as Deputy Mayor from 2000 to 2001 before being elected as Mayor from 2007 to 2013. Throughout his 27 years of continuous service, David was a strong, generous and compassionate leader in Council. He chaired countless council meetings, various committees of council and community advisory boards with distinction. David laid the foundations for improved relationships through the development of the City of Stirling Reconciliation Action Plan, based on respect, appreciation and understanding of Indigenous culture. He championed the establishment of the Whadjuk Northside Community Centre. Under David's leadership, Council progressed strategies to make the city more inclusive for seniors and people with disabilities. He led the advisory group that delivered the Mirrabooka Multicultural Centre, with his legacy evident in Mirrabooka's reputation as a home of settlement services, welcoming and providing support to thousands of newly arrived families to Australia. David made significant contributions to the local community through his professional and volunteer work. As a former police officer, David pursued efforts to improve safety and the prevention of crime in his local community and the North Metropolitan region. His leadership in this space helped to form the Crime Prevention Partnership Agreement and Safer Suburbs Plan, along with strengthening the city's relationship with the West Australian Police. David's skills in building and nurturing relationships with key stakeholders, including government, were fundamental in securing funding for the Mirrabooka Town Centre, Stirling Leisure Centres, Leisure Park Balga, Bina Parkland and the Scarborough Beach foreshore. In recognition of the outstanding contribution that he has made to the community of the City of Stirling, and as a lasting symbol of appreciation of the Council, the esteemed title of Honorary Freeman is bestowed upon David Boothman JP. The Common Seal of the City of Stirling was affixed on the 20th of February 2023 by authority of the resolution of Council in the presence of the Mayor and the Chief Executive Officer. I will ask you all now to stand and join me in congratulating David.
Okay, if you have to take a seat, everyone, thank you. And I can tell you, having attended and even led many council meetings here over the years, it's a very different experience to actually coming along and being the subject of a council meeting. And yeah, so please forgive me if I'm a little bit wobbly as to show you how I go about things. To talk about my journey on council, I actually do need to go back in time and to explaining why and what the circumstances were that led me to becoming a councillor. And this goes way back. And I became a police officer in 1974. And I'll try and keep it fairly short. But I became a police officer because I wanted to make a difference. And over the years, I served a couple of years up at Coolgardie and then came back to the metro area. I did many years throughout the North Metropolitan in particular, Initially in accident inquiries, or the AIS as it was called back then, attending crashes and things like that. And so we dealt with a lot of trauma, a lot of, unfortunately, tragedy for many families and so on and so forth. And then gradually I went into general duties and experienced then a lot of the social issues that are prevalent right throughout our community. Seen I saw the worst of some really nice people, and also some of the best of some really bad people. And coming out of that, you learn then to, try and understand why people do things and what the circumstances are that lead up to issues. So then getting on to why we're here tonight, I'll just explain quickly other things. And first off, I'll just start with a bit of a quote, and people know this. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, and it was the age of foolishness. And it was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredibility. And it was a season of light, it was a season of darkness. It was a spring of hope, and it was a winter of despair. For those of you who know the thing, it's the opening lines to The Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. And that's very much how I felt about the Balga area way back in the 1990s. The area was 34% of the housing stock was held by Homes West. This was going right through from Nollamara, Balga. Westminster didn't actually exist when I got on council, and Girrawheen and Kandoola. And there was lots of crime and social issues. And being a police officer, we had to deal with a lot of that. In actual fact, the 1st of April 1990, I was made up to sergeant. Very on this occasion. And I was posted to Warwick Police Station. And it was soon after that that I was introduced to Bill and Val Ashman. Could you stand up, Bill and Val? Where you are, please. Bill and Val Ashman here. Bill and Val Ashman were community people who lived on Arcana Road, Balga, as it was back then. And they ran the Northern Suburbs Blue Light. I attended one meeting. Take a seat, Bill and Val. You don't have to stand up. We're getting on a bit. I attended a meeting of that group, and I think I was the elected president of the same meeting. But anyway, and the group had issues, and but we sorted those out. We used to do monthly discos at the Herb Graham complex, where you'd have anything like 700 or 800 kids attending. We were very well supported at the time by the Stirling SES unit, and the coordinator of which was Maureen Grierson, another former councillor. And in addition to doing the blue lights there, we also used to fundraise by picking up the concrete slabs as they were being replaced from the footpaths around the city of Stirling. And Rod Constantine, actually, when I was speaking to him at the last time we met, actually mentioned that and your memories of Bill and Val. And for 10 years I was with the Blue Light, and we used to pick up these slabs and then sell them to the public to raise funds, and we used to raise around about $50,000, $60,000 a year just through that exercise. Money that we then used to put back into the likes of Camp Quality for children with cancer. And we also ran a project with police cadets who were doing the Duke of Edinburgh Award and engaging with kids at risk within the community, taking them on weekend camps and things like this. We also took the cadets and played basketball matches in the juvenile detention centres like Longmoor and Riverbank. And we had the support of the Perth Wildcats back then, the likes of James Crawford and Ricky Grace, who would come along and referee matches for us. In addition, we actually then obtained a lotteries grant and bought a blue light bus, and we mobilised ourselves, and we used to go around and do discos at other places like Duranda Primary School, Wandawi Primary School, Two Rock Surf Life Saving, Carnamah, Three Springs, and a few other small towns around, places where they didn't have blue lights and they didn't have access to those sorts of entertainment and stuff. And it was through my work with the blue light and everything that John Kubelki, who was our local member, very good friend and great local member, suggested that I run for council, which I did in May 1994. And I was elected unopposed. And perhaps something to do with that was the fact that back in them days, you actually didn't get any sitting fee for being on council. But I was very pleased to get elected anyway, and I hoped to start and try and address some of the issues that I saw as problems within the community. Do any of you know or have heard of the term greybeard and what it means? Well, a greybeard back then was what the kids were doing, was that they were going into, usually stealing the cans of chrome paint. And you would get them and you would spray it into a plastic bag and they'd hold it over the nose and mouth and breathe it in to get a high. And of course, all the paint would be around them and whatnot. And so that's things we used to, and there were numbers of kids like this that were in our community. There was a tree, and I won't say the name of the street, but in Westminster, a really beautiful large gum tree, very mature tree that had been there for years and years. And one day, a 16-year-old Aboriginal girl hung herself from the tree, and which was very distressing and is a thing. But what was even more distressing was that 12 months later, on the very same day, her cousin, another young Aboriginal girl, did the same thing. I actually then got on and spoke very strongly with the office of the city, and without any actual reference to council at the end, I don't think was thing, we got the tree cut down. And it's the first time and the only time I've really supported the taking out of a tree around things. You know, I've tried to have a conservation focus on the City of Stirling, but that was the thing. But these were the sort of issues that we were trying to address. In the 1990s, the RAC described Balga as the burglary capital of Australia. Homes West basically saw the area as a dumping ground for all antisocial tenants. If they had a problem in other areas and whatnot, they'd just stick them in Balga and the people had to sort of deal with it. And don't get me wrong, there were many countless residents who lived in Balga and the surrounding areas, people, good, hard-working, working class people, and who were trying to bring the kids up and get on with their lives. And so the people in that area started to get together and they formed the Balga Action Group. The likes of people such as, we've got here tonight, Cade Lidlow, Colin Cross, Alan Stafford, Sid Rostron, Keith Merritt, Keith Jones, Brian Roberts. I could name quite a few others, whatnot. And with the Balga Action Group, they started to protest, and they were on the nightly news for weeks. And I remember Kay, the harassing then Premier Richard Court on the nightly news to knock down all the 3-story blocks of flats in Balga. And that was a very successful campaign. And I was very proud, and along with Mayor Vallelonga at the time, to be stood there when the first block of flats was demolished with Richard Court there, and it was a fantastic time. But it went a little bit further than that because the government also undertook to introduce the New North redevelopment for the area. And that was to redevelop the properties throughout the area, the Homes West properties, and sell a lot of them off, and they kept some of them, what have you. So the Balga Action Group formed many committees to actually look at the things, and some of the things that they got involved in was actually going and doing inspections of the refurbished properties so that they could make sure that they are getting a quality job and that the project was running right. But that wasn't just the only thing. Obviously, they lobbied council and sat on committees to look at improving the parks, the streetscapes, and so many other things. I think at the height of its activity, there was over 2,500 active members of the Balga Action Group. And I was always proud to be a member. Coming out of that then, and I hadn't been long on council, and I recognised that the police force was changing its strategy, and they were going to a more strategic focus, and issues like community policing were sort of going on the back burner a little bit. So what that meant was that if you had a burglary, if you had a police person coming into your house and whatnot, that the likelihood of you actually getting police officers to attend was becoming more and more rare. If you were lucky, you might get the forensics officer a couple of days later or something like this, which is all well and good for people, so everyday people, but for those at risk and vulnerable people in the community, I was starting to see that there was a big issue there. And so I was proud when council supported, when I moved a motion for council to adopt its own security, and which is unanimously supported, and we did that in-house. The first coordinator of that was a guy called Peter Woodthorpe, was an ex-work colleague I'd known used to be a police officer. But then Laurie Crouch took over. Laurie's here tonight, and thank you coming, Laurie. And Laurie just retired last year after running the place for many, many years. As the mayor said the things there, it was not only security patrols, there's a whole gamut of activities. There was Adopt a Park, there was the graffiti projects, and so on and so forth, and became very well regarded and well respected. And I thank Laurie for his support and his service throughout that time, particularly because Laurie also barracks for the Eagles, and like his boss who sat alongside of him there, he used to barrack for the Dockers, but we'll let that pass, Trevor. But I will get on to then Trevor Holland, who sat alongside him there. Trevor was a director at the City of Stirling for many years. Well, I mean, he went up through the ranks and what have you. And in the early 2000s, the federal government changed its focus in respect to humanitarian settlements, and they were bringing in around about 150,000 to 200,000 people a year into the country, and Western Australia got 10% of those. Out of that 10%, 60% of those were being settled in the Balga area. And that was 800 to 1,000 people. And a lot of those initial ones were African migrants coming out of refugee camps in North Africa. And they were being put into, there was one last remaining block of 3-storey flats in Balga on the eastern side, and they put poor people in there. No amenities, no shops, no ready access to transport. Many of these people didn't have driver's licenses, didn't know how to get a driver's license. And there was lots of issues that we saw there. And by this stage, I had taken up a position as in my police life at Mirrabooka Police Station. And one of my bosses from the district office, Inspector Mick Walker, we sort of got our heads together and we approached the city, and mainly through the agency of Trevor Holland, and through and his area, Chris Brereton, what have you, and we looked at how we could start to try and address some of the issues to get these people integrated, because we didn't want to see the place going back to being a ghetto. We didn't want to see the problems that are occurring in New South Wales and Victoria, where you're having these gangs that were sort of got, and stuff like that. And so we introduced programs. And one of the first programs, we got 3 years, we got funded for a program called Real Connections from the federal government. And that was a very real and very successful program that led to the integration and setup of a lot of the services that now we give to the migrants and other settlers throughout the area. And the coordinator of the Real Connections program was a lady that's called Sarah Janali, who a lot of you would know. And unfortunately, I've invited Sarah here tonight. She stood me up because she's gone to see some guy called Harry Styles with her teenage daughter. But Sarah was a very, very good manager for that project. And I was very pleased that when the funding ended, that we were able to keep Sarah on, because Sarah was doing uni studies and she got a Churchill Fellowship. And Sarah went over to Toronto, Canada, to study a program that's running, I think it's called Tribec. I can't, if somebody can remember the thing. But basically what it was a program to further integrate migrants and whatnot and give skills recognition and pair them up with businesses and sponsoring by people in various entities and with expertise and backgrounds to help the migrants to integrate into the workforce. And that program was called the Kaleidoscope, as we adopted it here in the City of Stirling. And unfortunately, I see that the funding for that was just cut out this last financial year, which is unfortunate because it was a very successful and very well maintained program. So hopefully we're going to keep up that sort of activity and keep things going. We have, and sorry, I haven't got your married name again, Lisa, but Lisa Harvey here. In 2007, when I first became mayor, and the city was struggling with the seas, the Scarborough Foreshore concept, the development, we'd identified a program which was going to cost $60-odd million, and we were looking at how we're going to fund that. And Colin Barnett basically came out, because one of the funding options that we did sort of half consider was paid parking at the beach. And he said, no, you're not going to have any paid parking at the beach. And basically we on council said, well, put your money where your mouth is. And we had a few meetings, and I know Lisa was a strong agent in that and whatnot. And the Barnett government gave us $30 million to kick off funding to commence the redevelopment down at Scarborough. There's been further funding since and further things that have gone on. In the meantime, Mirrabooka. The Mirrabooka Centre project, we've ran over quite a number of years. The Mirrabooka bus station, if anybody actually ever looked at crime statistics and everything like that, they averaged 2 serious crimes a week. And we're talking about the odd murder, rapes, armed hold-ups and things like this. It was a really bad place. And you could see why a lot of people didn't want to know about Mirrabooka, didn't want to go in there. The Carpenter government put on the table $2.5 million to refurbish the Mirrabooka bus station. But then the transport unions held the project up, and they held the project up. The government transitioned to the Barnett government, and the project held up and held up. So several years down the track, there was still $2.5 million on the agenda, but now Department of Transport were coming and telling us that we needed $5 million to do the refurbishment. So Stuart Jardine and I went over and spoke to several departments and lobbied ministers, what have you, and we got $2.7 million from the federal government to give to the state government so that they would refurbish their bus station. On top of that, we also then convinced the community to sell a parcel of land across the front of the Herb Graham, which was divided up into many lots, and realised something like about, I think, $13 million in total by the time of the thing. And that money was used to do the infrastructure for the basically refurbishment of Mirrabooka. And so at least for the first 10 years or so of the project, the Mirrabooka Regional Centre project was done without any impact on ratepayers' funds and stuff like that. It was something I was very proud of. Mainly because initially I think I never would have got council to fund it, but as it sort of progressed, I just think it was a thing that we were rolling with, and we've done a lot of work. So being on council and being active and involved with the community and getting community support is very, well, it's a very necessary thing as councillors, but also we do need the support of officers. And we have another officer here that I do want to recognise today. Keith Rickman, could you stand up please, Keith? Sorry to embarrass you, what have you. Now, Keith Rickman, a lot of you wouldn't know him, whatnot. He was employed at the city for 50 years, Keith. And Keith wound up, he just retired last year as well, as a manager of waste services. I don't know your actual title, but it's close enough, I think, Keith. And over those 50 years Keith did here, he started here out of primary school, I think. But Keith, every time we had a problem or what have you, Keith had a solution. And he worked hard, obviously with his bosses and with the rest of council and what have you, and he worked tirelessly. And councillors would know, I mean, when you're a councillor and Friday night, all councils finished and everything like that, 11 o'clock at night, you'd get a phone call from a ratepayer. My bin wasn't emptied, or there's rubbish down on the thing. You've got to do something about it. We'd give Keith a ring, and no worries, councillor, I'll get it fixed. And it was fixed. And he did that tirelessly. He did a lot of other projects and programs right through the industry, and is very well regarded. And as recognition of that, Keith was awarded the Australia Order of Medal this year in the Australia Day Honours. Well done, Keith, and please give him. Thank you. Of course, being on council, you've also then got to liaise with and talk to your local members and get on with them. And Lisa was a, really, really good friend and resource on the thing there. I also had Janine Freeman before Janine, John Kubelke, now Meredith has taken over. And my David Michael, one of my good councillors, defected and became a local member. But well done, David, and you were a great support while you were on the thing there. Also, I'd just like to mention some of the community people. Barbara Price, can you just quickly stand up, Barbara? I'm sorry to do this, Barbara. Barbara used to work for the city. When did you work for the city, Barbara? Yeah. So, thank you, Barbara. And Barbara, after she retired, many years ago, she was being very active in the community in various roles. Currently, she's with the Balga Autumn Club, where she's been a committee member for many years. Barbara's 93, and she's still very active. Alongside of her, there we've got Kate Costa, and Betty Della, and Pam, sorry, yes, second name Pam. And there are so many other people in the community who stand up every day, and they are putting on support and helping us to do our job as councillors. I'm getting towards the end now of actually what I wanted to say. But one of the lessons that that I've learned and learnt over the years, and sort of encapsulated in a bit of a quote from Michelle Obama, who said, one of the lessons that I grew up with was to always stay true to yourself and never let what somebody else say distract you from your goals. I've tried to do that all my life. 33 years as a police officer, 27 years as a councillor. I've had a fortunate life, and I think I've achieved some things, and I'm very proud to get the recognition that I'm here for tonight. Before I do finish, though, I also want to recognise the great people sat down here off to our left, the council support officers, Regan and Jackson and Darren. Was it Darren? I've only met you tonight, I haven't sort of thing. Of course, Catherine Redden, who's been contacting you, many of you, and things like that. And these guys are our lifeblood. They do all of the background stuff for councillors, organising things, getting your equipment, making sure that you're aware of things, getting your agendas, putting out the minutes and so on and so forth. And so that's as far as I think that's what I want to sort of say. I want to thank my family and friends who've come down and come along here tonight. It's been a gracious thing. This has been my life for a very long time. And I'll just actually close, I think, which seems appropriate to me, you might not think, but a quote from William Shakespeare. He said, good night, parting a sweet sorrow, that I shall say good night till it doth be morrow. Sleep dwell in thine eyes, peace in thy breast, would I were sleep and peace so sweet to rest. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I was worried for a while we were going to have to ask council for a time extension. One of the things that you'll read in the programs that you have, I wanted to just pick out a few lines just to finish. And I think this sums it up, David. Beautiful speech. But council is confident that the 10th Freeman of the City of Stirling will represent the city's values and will perform his duties with pride and passion. So congratulations, David. And I now move to item 9, which is closure of the formalities of this evening, and I close the meeting at 6:37 p.m. Thank you.